Hey, what's up, guys? It's Sean from the Comics Pals. We are here live at New York Comic Con 2024. It is Friday, and the buzz is palpable in this room all over the place. People are excited about comics, which I'm happy to see. What I am most excited about in this very moment, though, is standing next to a man who I've been dying to speak with, but also a man who my audience is very, very familiar with. I am standing next to the artist behind Birds of Prey, the most recent arc, which was phenomenal. We're going to get into that. Predator vs. Wolverine, Superman 78, Gavin Guidry.
How's it going?
Fantastic. It's so good to be standing next to you.
Nice. Yeah, man. It's one of the beautiful things about doing this show is there's just so many people around that you don't get to see normally. It's fun getting to talk to you guys and cruise around, see so many of my peers that I don't necessarily get to see at smaller shows in other parts of the country, and, getting to do and see and talk about fun stuff.
Yeah, and you're, so one of the reasons why I wanted to interview you so badly, outside of the fact that, we're becoming friendly, is the fact that it's been so fun for me as a fan to watch your ascent. From last year when we spoke and you were showing us Superman 78 stuff that wasn't even released yet, to now where you've worked on one of my favorite books, which is Birds of Prey, and you've got so much coming that we can't even discuss right now. No. How do you feel just in that 1 year time span of how your life is changing?
It's crazy, right? So Superman kind of sat on the shelves for so long that there was a thing that I had to reckon with where, I drew it and it sat for maybe 6 months, so that once it was coming out, I kept working in the interim. And then there was a period where, for 13 months, I had one thing on shelves every single month, guaranteed, and in some cases, 3 or 4 things, between covers and shorts and stuff. So it's just you're just I'm there all year round. And it's been really interesting. The first con I ever did was in Memphis, and I didn't go last year for the first time. And it's going to be weird. I'm going to get to experience it in real time next week, where there's a show that I used to do all the time that missed me in that interim. And all of a sudden I'm going to go from having nothing out to now that I'm there a year later, it's all this stuff.
That's awesome.
It's wild. Yeah, man. It's interesting, because this whole career is kind of about building and putting things in place and hoping they pay out, as any creative career, as what you guys do. It's about doing the baby steps and putting things together and hoping that they pay off. And when you start to see them kind of pay off and snowball, it's weird, right? It's exciting. Yeah. It's a little anxiety-inducing in some cases, but it's also extremely gratifying to not only be like, oh, I'm doing the thing I always wanted to do, but also, oh, those things that I did paid off. Right? The thing I'm building is falling into place. And a lot of that is preparation, but a lot of that is that thing of oh man, am I one of the lucky few that has a dream and gets to live it? It's wild.
I think you are. I really think you are. And one of the things that I appreciate so much about comic book creators when I get to talk to them is how appreciative and how much you guys recognize that moment. Because there's so many people, I feel like a lot of people who are fans of comics kind of secretly want to make them.
Sure.
And you're one of the ones that's getting to do that.
I look at my friends and family and people around me, and it's how many people even had that thing that they've always known they wanted to do?
Right.
Rare on its own, and then getting to do it, my cousin's husband is a major league pitcher.
Wow.
Or I guess now he's a free agent now, but outside of him, I'm the only one who's not just who didn't fall into a career.
Sure.
We had a thing we wanted and we got to do it. And that's out of 30 people in my family around our age group. I'm it's crazy, and amongst my friends, it's kind of a similar thing where it's rare to have the dream, let alone get to pursue it. And I've been wanting to do this since I was 6.
Wow.
Yeah, it's 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's wild, man. Tapping into the 11-year-old me and the 6-year-old me and even the 29-year-old me who is I'm going to really pursue comics. Even the 33-year-old me who was doing okay, but trying to put those things in place to get somewhere bigger.
Sure.
And looking back and just being God, you got to appreciate it for not just who you are now, but who you were then.
I love that.
It's wild.
You've had the opportunity to work with a lot of tremendous creators throughout your, relatively young career.
Yeah.
has that sort of been a pinch me moment where it's like I'm working with this one and I'm talking to that one?
Oh yeah, especially this next thing I'm gonna do is like, wow.
Yeah.
And it's funny the kismet of like, things rhyme. Previous books I've worked on connected to other people. It's funny how it all happens, right? Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, not just from the writer standpoint, but even like Jordy Belair, Matt Wilson.
Yeah.
Like two of my absolute favorite colorists, and I've gotten to work with them more than once. It's amazing.
Well, your art is amazing, and so it's no surprise to me that you're seeing this rise and this ascent. The stuff that you did in Birds of Prey was incredible, and we reviewed every single issue, of course, and we always loved it, and it felt like you kind of got a special piece of it because you were doing, like every issue had a different artist and stuff, but then you were the constant.
I was the real world.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was so awesome. And I have to thank you here in front of the world for what you did for me personally by drawing Zealot with the half glove. Thank you so much. Real ones know what I'm talking about.
I've got that page here if you want to look at it.
Oh, I have to see it.
The cover?
I have to see it.
Well, I've got all of it here, but...
Oh, my goodness. Hopefully we can get this on the camera because this is...
Let me find the cover. It's in here somewhere.
This is a rare treat for me, guys. If you're a regular listener of Palsiples, you know what this means to me.
There you go.
Oh, my God.
She's kind of got her hand up.
Yes.
She's holding the sword out here. I purposely put the hand up specifically so that I could sneak it in there and get it visible.
Oh my God! I'm gonna have to put some shekels together so that I can buy this because I need that.
I should have made it a print. I didn't even think about it in time. I should have made a print specially for you.
But what was it like to get to work on a book that honestly is in the conversation 2 years in a row as best series?
Anxiety inducing. It was great. Like it's funny in the comic industry how frequently you get an email and the subject line is just like, "Hey, want to do this?" And you're like, "Yeah, man." Like in between all your junk emails, you all of a sudden see the words "Birds of Prey"
right
in a subject line. It catches you off guard. But following someone like Leo, who's incredible, and having the book be so popular, it was definitely you're stepping into kind of big shoes. It helped that I got to share it with a bunch of other people.
Sure.
And it was definitely an interesting structure where we jumped back and forth multiple times. And it was kind of fun getting to play off of what everybody else was doing. But yeah, it was pretty big to be put. I mean, my whole career has been that. Like when you get that first job, you kind of think of like, oh, I'll have an entry-level job.
Right.
No, my first job was Superman, which is weird.
Whoa.
Yeah. When they reached out to me, they didn't say that. They just said, I'm this editor. Would you like to work with us? And I was like, yeah, man, I absolutely would love to. What did you have in mind? And then I got the follow-up email, and I'm pacing around my driveway because I told my wife, and then I went outside to kind of come to terms with it emotionally. And I'm pacing, and then the email comes in of what he says, and there's a paragraph that I completely skipped because I saw the word Superman, and my eyes were drawn to it immediately.
Sure.
And like I rushed to the front door, and I opened it, I dramatically threw it open, and I was like, "It's Superman!" And she was like all the way across the house, and then I shut the door. So I don't know what she went through in that moment, but it was a funny thing to like have the excitement, and then have like the wave of like emotion of like some kind of crash on you that like I'm not drawing a sub-team of a popular team or even a backup or a C-list thing that they're just kind of putting anybody on. They gave me Superman out of the gates, which, God love them, was huge for me. So it's been interesting to get to kind of fall into place on those things. Like even Predator versus Wolverine, Predator's a beloved franchise. Yeah. Everybody loves Wolverine. I remember, I'm a Spider-Man guy, but I also was a Spider-Man guy in Wolverine's heyday where Wolverine was freaking everywhere, right? Like Spider-Man's popular now, but man, late 90s, 2000s, Wolverine was on he was in every comic, he was all over the place.
Yeah.
The man was working 24/7. But yeah, I've been really fortunate to get to do really, really cool things, and I'm actually, it's not stopping. The next thing is really kind of a lifelong feather in my cap that I've wanted to kind of get to that I'm really excited about, especially when I look at it like being the person that gets to do it in my specific situation. It's hard to talk about without talking about, but yeah, it's crazy that it came together.
Well, knowing what it is, I feel privileged to know.
It's wild.
It is wild, and it's appropriate, and it's poignant, and I'm personally very excited to see what you do, just because I know how important it is to you, and I know you're going to put your heart and soul into it.
Oh, I'm going to have to work very hard. But not just that, but even, the current artist is also so damn good.
Yeah.
That, again, big shoes to fill for an issue. I've got to make sure I don't let them down.
Well, you talked about the Superman opportunity, and even last year, I remember remarking with the rest of the pals that we could see exactly why you were chosen for that book.
Yeah, the calculus makes sense. I even had that moment when it first happened where I was like, oh my God, Superman. And then a few minutes later, I was like, I get it.
Yeah.
I see what they're thinking. I see where I could be a natural next step. It's just, knowing that the calculus makes sense doesn't necessarily mean that they're always going to agree with you on it.
Sure.
So, yeah, it was equal parts huge, but equal parts like, I get why they got me on this one. I also see why they got me on this next thing.
Well, I mean, without question. Do you have aspirations for stuff? Because right now you're playing in the Big Two sandbox, which is fantastic. But do you have aspirations to kind of ply your trade outside that space and do some more original stuff, maybe even partnering with someone to do some stuff outside the Big Two?
Yeah, all year long in between my Big Two work, I've been doing a creator-owned book with Alejandro Arbona, who's a former editor at Marvel. We're doing a Giallo 1980 slasher send-up called Camp Yellowwood Slaughter.
Oh.
Yeah, it's 90 pages. We're putting it out through Ghost Flying Press. It's going to be out early next year, I believe. I'm almost done with it. So I am getting to dip my toes kind of in both worlds of doing like a fun horror thing. And then also, getting to play with all the action figures that I played with as a kid, metaphorically speaking, and sometimes literally. And I do definitely plan, I want to stay playing with the fun toys for a while, but I do have plans in the next few years where I definitely want to kind of come and go, right? Get to do some big fun stuff that I just get to have fun with and add my name to a list of people in history who got to work on these things, and then also make my own stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Well, the thing that I'm always struck by is how an artist who's so busy working at the Big Two, or anywhere really, can find the time in the margins to do something else. So how do you sort of make that work for yourself?
I think we're all, by and large, workaholics.
Sure.
That probably comes a lot from the fact that it's the dream job thing, so you're passionate about it, right? And the truism is a truism for a reason that, like, when you have this sort of a job, there's no real day off, because even when you're off, your wheels are turning either on like a new idea or also like, oh, I could be doing this right now.
Right.
So unfortunately for my wife, it's the rare day where I'm really just like, we have to have a bunch of stuff going on for me to be able to just completely remove myself and not feel weirdly guilty for not drawing.
Sure.
Between commissions or pages or doing designs or whatever. There's so many moments where it's like, I'm just sitting on the couch right now. I could be drawing. Right? So yeah, I think we're all a little brain broken and addicted. Some guys, like, there was a period of time where I was doing 2 books at a time. And I was working 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, and I was working almost 7 days a week, where I would take an odd day off every now and then. And it was wild, but it's just kind of a thing that you have to do sometimes, I was talking to Hayden Sherman, actually.
Sure.
Because, of course, he's like him and Dan Mora, it's like, y'all are, like, what are you doing, man?
Unbelievable.
And he told me, he's like, well, I'll work like maybe 10 hours and I was like, oh, I get it now. Yeah, I work 7 hours a day now because I slowed down. I was like, my kids are getting a little bit bigger, my body's hurting more, and also just for overall health is like maybe 9 to 5 it for a little while and
sure,
go on walks every now and then and take some time off. But yeah, the natural inclination for a lot of us, I think, is that we wouldn't need the chain to hold us to the desk. We would just always be there anyway. It calls us.
Yeah.
It naturally draws us. Plus, drawing, unfortunately, is really fun. So, like, that was my thing when I was doing Superman. I was like, I wake up and I get to draw Superman every day. I would wake up every day knowing I'm drawing Superman.
No matter what else is going on,
I'm drawing Superman. And that's always going to be fun.
Well, one of the things I love so much about your particular style, and again, why I believe you were chosen for that Superman series, is you kind of bring like a softness to things, which I really appreciate. I think a lot of comic book art, not that I'm denigrating it in any way, but a lot of the style that I see is like a little harder, a little bit of a harder edge to it. And so I really appreciate the fact that your style's a little bit different because it's a different flavor. And I love that about comics. We can have every style.
Yeah, I exist in a weird space between retro and modern where like, as much as I'm a huge fan of like Toth and the Toth guys like Somni, but Stuart Eminem's one of my favorite artists, and he's very modern, right?
Yeah.
So as much as I have, a bit of Stuart and Toth, there's also like I'll look at Gil Kane's Spider-Man, and I'll melt.
Right.
Buscema I think is fantastic. So there's a lot of these guys who are working in the Silver Age or even older that like I'm still drawn to for like some thicker line weights and some feathering, and it's just a little bit more lush, while also loving the angularness of more modern comics and playing with line weights in a different way and hatching. Thin hatching is way more common now, or in the last 30 years than it would have been in the 60s.
Right.
So I try to kind of find a balance where I can do both. And I think hopefully it helps me kind of stay in a more timeless range where I'm sure my art will evolve and change as I continue to work. But I'm hoping to kind of be a man out of time, as it were, for my career if I can.
You saying that just put Captain America drawn by you in my mind, and I'm like, I need to see that.
I got to pencil a Captain America Scholastic thing with Brent Schoonover, and he went. I had his thumbnails that I would pencil for him, and he inked over them. So I almost got to, and it sounds dumb to say, but like you have that revelation of like, I'm a really smart guy. It would be awesome if I got to draw Captain America. I'm glad I really discovered that revelation now. Like Superman, Oh yeah, here's my genius career move. Draw more Superman. But it is so fun and he's so iconic.
Yeah.
And they both are that it is a thing of like, oh yeah, like I'm a Spider-Man, Batman guy, and I love them, and I always will. But like, I really enjoy drawing Superman, and I will gladly, call me. I will draw it all the time.
You heard it here first, DC, and anybody looking for a commission, my man can draw some Superman. The last question that I have for you is, now that you're sort of playing in that larger sandbox and you're working with, these incredibly talented creators, you yourself among them. Are there lessons that you're learning that are sort of baked into your work now? Are you leveling up? Do you feel that level up?
I think to a degree you kind of always do. And I actually did a portfolio review for some kids who were at the Kubert School a little while ago. And I told them that like you get better ostensibly with every page, but certainly with every project. And like when I started on Superman, there were things that I wasn't quite doing in the first two issues that I kind of landed on around issue 3 or 4. So by the time I was doing issue 6, it was definitely better work. And adding a little bit more dimension to my work by having like a wider gamut of line weights. Coming in after I would have been normally done and kind of adding a few extra accentuations and just a little bit extra texture.
Sure.
And I feel like all of a sudden it's like, it kind of took it up a notch, and it became a more standard thing that I do. I kind of approach every book a little differently with my style, because I'm not going to draw a Batman book the same way I'm going to draw a Superman, certainly not Superman 78.
Right.
But that aspect, that technique, was a thing that I kind of just landed on, right? And then, of course, when you start to see things coming out in print, colored especially,
right,
and you kind of like, oh, well, if I did this that way and they then took it and did this thing to it and it looks like this now, then I now know later on how to approach it, like a new problem solving, learning how I want to approach doing like a really heavy rain scene, per se. you kind of have to think it out about how you would do it. But of course, this job, a lot of it's learning on the job. So
Right.
it is a thing of like, I'm just gonna have to wing it, and kind of eventually over time you land on like your new approach to things. So there's definitely a natural element of learning anyway. But yeah, getting to do bigger projects and seeing, especially when I'm like following Leo and being like, okay, well, how did Leo handle this world? You know, and obviously I'm me, and I'm not trying to be Leo, but I'm trying to be a faithful steward to the
Yeah.
world they created.
Yeah, consistency.
Yeah, and you know, you learn a lot every book, and I got to thing that I was telling people, like I discovered mid Birds of Prey that like, oh, I'm kind of getting to do Batman because Cassie's like a little Batman goblin.
Sure, yeah.
So I took that last issue. Every chance that I had where she was kind of being a little menacing or whatever, I went full Batman as much as I could, just heavy blacks, and all you see are the eyes. And that was
cool.
a lot of fun, and you know, it's a thing that I hadn't necessarily considered before. So now it's like, well, I'm kind of learning now how I might do Batman. You know, finding my take on things.
Right. That is so, like, I can imagine that when you get a project finished, it's almost like, gosh, I wish I could go back to the beginning with what I've,
yeah.
developed now.
All the time. I mean, you'll hear from so many artists who like, yeah, I don't look at anything that I drew 6 months ago because it's like torture. I don't hate what I did, like a lot of, like some artists do, but there's definitely that thing of like, you have to divorce yourself from it a little bit.
Sure.
Because it would be a thing of like, oh, I would have totally done it differently, or like, oh, that line's not the best. I could have gone a little slower. But you know, you're not living in deadline land 12 months later.
Right.
Definitely there's some element of, you know, done is better than perfect. But in hindsight, there's always like, yeah, but it could have been a little bit more perfect, right? I could have gotten closer, maybe. But I don't let the nitpicky aspect of that drown out like how cool it is just to have like that image.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And now like having the trade out, it's like, oh, I have like a hardcover, like a softcover book of mine. You know, and like now with the new DC stuff, the thing that I was talking about with some people earlier is like now that the logo is back.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this was great. I like this logo fine, but the logo that I associate with DC Comics is coming back. And once my new covers come out with that on it, there's gonna be a moment of like, yes, that's what you want to look at. Like,
Sure.
oh man, with that logo.
Well, dude, your art is what we want to look at. You've been doing amazing work. Congratulations on all the success.
I appreciate
It's
it.
been really cool to watch you rise, and I cannot wait to see where you're at in 1 year from now.
You and me both.
All right, we're going to leave it here. Gavin Guidry, make sure you check out what's coming and what's been done. Birds of Prey was phenomenal. Go get that. Definitely go get that. Gavin, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate
My
you.
pleasure, man.
We're the Comics Pals. We will see you all weekend because we're running up and down Artist Alley, getting interviews, taking pictures, kissing babies. Not really. We're having a great time. So keep it locked to youtube.com/the Comics Pals for all of the great NYCC content coming from us. I'm Sean. Take care, guys.